A poor single dad gives shelter to a stranger on a stormy night, not knowing she's the daughter of a billionaire, and about to change his life. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Alexander said, his voice steady but concerned as the rain soaked through his jacket. "This isn't a place for anyone at 2 a.m. The girl spun around, startled. Her hair clung to her face, eyes wide with fear. She crossed her arms. "I don't need your pity," she snapped. Alexander stepped closer, but carefully, his city worker uniform catching the glow of the streetlight. "It's not a pity," he said softly. "It's an offer. A warm place. Safe. No strangers. No knives." She hesitated. He noticed her trembling hands and the way her eyes darted nervously toward the dark street corner. "What happened?" he asked gently. Her voice broke. "I was robbed. My phone's dead. My bag's gone." Silence hung heavy. Alexander glanced down the street, then back at her. Inside, he was torn. He had a 6-year-old daughter at home. This was a risk. But something in her eyes, pride and fear tangled together, made his decision. "All right," he said, adjusting his work bag. "I live 2 blocks away. It's not much, but it's safe. You can take the couch tonight." Her knees nearly buckled. "Okay," she whispered. The rain came down in sheets, thick and punishing, as if the night itself wanted to drive everyone off the streets. On a deserted block, a lone man strode with steady steps, shoulders squared against the storm. Alexander Moreau had finished his night shift hauling refuse through the city's endless arteries. The stench clung to him, but his posture carried a quiet dignity. He worked hard, not for recognition, but for his 6-year-old daughter who waited at home. As he turned the corner, his sharp eyes caught a figure huddled beneath a flickering street lamp. A girl, no, a young woman. Her hair plastered to her face, clothes soaked through. She hugged her arms across her chest, trembling, her pride holding her upright when her body wanted to collapse. Alexander slowed. Something about her presence unsettled him. There was an elegance beneath the disarray, a fragility cloaked in steel. She looked as if she didn't belong here, and yet here she was, like a diamond tossed into the gutter. "Miss," he called gently, his voice firm but not threatening. Her head snapped up. Eyes sharp, wild. For a heartbeat, they were 2 strangers caught in the cold, measuring each other. "I'm fine," she shot back, though her voice cracked. "Go about your business." Alexander's jaw tightened. He had seen that kind of defiance before, the kind that hides desperation. He stepped closer, careful to keep his tone calm. "It's dangerous to be out here this time of night. You'll freeze before morning." "I said I'm fine," she barked, but the shake in her voice betrayed her. Alexander's gaze softened. "It's not a pity," he said evenly. "It's an offer. A roof. A couch. A door that locks." The girl faltered. Her eyes darted down the empty street. Her lips pressed together, trembling. "My bag's gone," she admitted quietly, her voice breaking. "My phone too. Someone grabbed me, shoved me down. I didn't know where else to go." For a moment, Alexander said nothing. The rain pattered around them, muffling the world. He thought of his daughter, Celeste, sleeping warm in their modest home just 2 blocks away. He thought of the risks, bringing a stranger inside, exposing his little girl to the unknown. And yet, he couldn't walk away. Not from this. "Come," he said finally, extending his hand. "It isn't much. But it's safe." The girl stared at his hand for what felt like forever. Then, slowly, with trembling fingers, she placed her palm against his. The small duplex smelled faintly of old wood and coffee. A space worn by years but alive with care. Alexander gestured to the couch, worn but clean, the kind of furniture that held memories. "You can take this," he said, pulling a folded blanket from the closet. Bathroom's through there. My daughter's asleep upstairs. Keep the door shut, if you don't mind. The girl nodded, clutching the blanket like armor. Thank you, she murmured, barely audible. Alexander gave a curt nod, retreating toward the stairs. He paused once, glanced back at her huddled on the couch, then disappeared into the dim hallway. Morning arrived with the smell of burnt toast and laughter spilling from the kitchen. Celeste, bright-eyed and mischievous, peeked around the corner. Papa, who's that? She whispered loudly, pointing at the stranger on their couch. The girl startled awake, rubbing her eyes. For a second, panic shot across her face, until she saw Celeste's wide grin. Alexander set down the pan, sighing. Our guest. Be polite, Celeste. Celeste tilted her head. She looks like a princess. The girl's cheeks flushed. Hardly, she whispered. But the warmth in her smile betrayed her. Her name, she finally offered, was Seraphina Carlisle. No last name at first, only Sarah. She spoke little of where she came from, sidestepped questions with practiced grace. But Alexander saw the truth in her small gestures, the way her fingers smoothed the blanket with nervous precision, the way her eyes lingered on the family photos of Celeste taped proudly to the refrigerator. Later, when Alexander prepared to leave for work again, he paused at the door. If you're serious about staying on your feet, he said, a laundromat down the street is hiring. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. Sarah hesitated. Pride flared in her eyes, but then faded. I'll think about it. That evening, when Alexander returned, he noticed something by the door, a new pair of sneakers, size too small for him, too large for Celeste. A note rested inside, if I'm walking away, at least let me walk without pain. He allowed himself the faintest smile. But the city doesn't let fragile peace last. One night, as Sarah accompanied Alexander on his late deliveries, a large dog lunged from behind a fence. She stumbled back, twisting her ankle. Alexander's voice thundered in alarm, his hand gripping her arm with surprising force. Are you trying to get yourself killed? He barked, fear disguised as anger. Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from the weight of being scolded like a child. She pulled away, her pride bristling. But the look in Alexander's eyes, sharp, worried, protective, lingered longer than his words. That night, back at the laundromat, Sarah dropped her bag as she reached for a rag. The flap slipped open. Something tumbled out. Not a trinket. Not a keepsake. A sapphire pendant, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, cut with precision, unmistakably expensive. Alexander froze. His breath caught. He bent, picked it up between his calloused fingers, staring at it as though it had burned him. His eyes rose to meet hers. The storm outside the laundromat windows rattled the glass. That's not something a broke student carries, he said low, steady, every word weighted. Seraphina's chest heaved. Her lips trembled, eyes shining with unshed tears. She met his gaze, her voice soft but sharp, like glass breaking. I left a world where everything has a price, except love. Silence. The hum of machines. The storm pounding louder. And in that silence, Alexander realized, whoever this girl was, she carried secrets heavier than rain. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and share, it helps more people find us. The laundromat was empty except for the drone of machines and the buzz of a dying fluorescent bulb. Alexander leaned against the folding table, the sapphire pendant heavy in his hand. Seraphina's face had gone pale, her lips parted but no words came. That pendant, Alexander said, his voice low, steady, unyielding. It doesn't belong to a girl sleeping on my couch. Who are you really? Her hands trembled as she reached out, snatching the pendant from his palm. She clutched it to her chest as if it were the last piece of herself she could protect. You wouldn't understand, she whispered. Try me, Alexander shot back. For a heartbeat, her mask cracked. Her eyes glistened, not with pride, but with something softer, fear. But the moment passed. She turned away, spine stiff, jaw clenched. "You were kind enough to help me. Let's leave it at that." Alexander's jaw tightened. He wanted to press further, but Celeste's laughter rang in his memory, her innocent trust, her wide-eyed admiration for this stranger. He swallowed his anger, but the seed of doubt had been planted. 2 days later, that seed sprouted. The laundromat's door chimed. A man in a cheap leather jacket strolled in, camera phone raised casually. He wasn't here for laundry. His eyes flicked over the machines, then landed squarely on Seraphina. Well, he said with a grin that made her blood run cold. The runaway heiress, hiding out where no one would think to look. Seraphina froze. Alexander stiffened. The man raised his phone higher, snapping pictures without shame. "Your father's been frantic. There's a reward, you know. 6 figures. His grin widened. "And I could use the payday." Seraphina's breath came in shallow gasps. Before she could speak, Alexander moved. His broad frame blocked the camera, his hand shooting out to push it down. "Delete it," he ordered. The man sneered. "Who the hell are you? Her new bodyguard? This is public." Alexander's fist closed around the phone, pressing hard enough that the man's smirk faltered. "Delete it." Something in Alexander's eyes, steel, the kind forged by years of surviving hard truths, made the man hesitate. With a curse, he tapped furiously, erasing the photos. Alexander shoved the phone back into his chest. "Get out." The man stumbled backward, eyes darting between them. "This isn't over," he spat, then stormed out into the night. Silence. Seraphina's knees nearly buckled. Alexander caught her arm. "Who was that?" "Someone who knows," she whispered. Her shoulders shook. "My father, he'll know now. He'll come." Alexander tightened his grip. "Then we leave. Now." He rushed her out the laundromat's back door, weaving through alleys slick with rain. Every step, Seraphina's heart hammered. By the time they reached his duplex, her ankle throbbed, but fear drove her faster. Alexander opened the door to find Mrs. Ramirez, the trusted neighbor, sitting on the couch with Celeste curled against her. "I came by when I saw someone hanging around the house earlier," Mrs. Ramirez said grimly. "Figured you might need backup." Alexander's eyes darkened. He thanked her quietly, then ushered Seraphina inside. He checked the locks twice. His daughter was safe, for now. But deep inside, a truth gnawed at him: they couldn't keep running. Whoever Seraphina was, her world was coming for her. The black car arrived 2 days later. It was sleek, polished, foreign to this street of rusted mailboxes and patched fences. Neighbors peeked through curtains as the door opened. From the back seat stepped a man in a tailored suit. His salt and pepper hair was immaculately combed, his presence commanding like a king surveying a conquered land. Edward Carlisle. Seraphina's father. He strode up the walkway without hesitation, 2 suited men trailing like shadows. Alexander met him at the door, shoulders squared. "Mr. Moreau," Edward said smoothly, his voice as sharp as cut glass. "I believe you have something of mine." Alexander's jaw flexed. "She's not an object." Edward's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Wealth builds clarity. Love muddies it. My daughter has been led astray, but it ends tonight." Inside, Seraphina stood frozen. Her chest tightened at the sound of that voice, both familiar and suffocating. She saw the disdain in her father's eyes, the judgment, the unspoken command: "Come back, now." Celeste peeked around the corner, her small face pale with confusion. Alexander gently guided her back toward Mrs. Ramirez, his eyes never leaving Edward's. "You've built a fine cage for her," Alexander said. "But a cage, no matter how gilded, is still a cage." Edward's expression hardened. "And what do you offer her? A life of mediocrity? Scrubbing clothes in dingy basements?" He gestured disdainfully at Alexander's work boots. "She's Carlisle blood. She belongs to a world of legacy, not poverty." Alexander didn't flinch. "She belongs where she's free." For the first time, Edward's eyes flicked with something. Was it uncertainty? Or rage at being challenged? He stepped forward, voice like thunder. "Seraphina. Come." Her heart pounded. She glanced at Alexander, his protective stance, his unspoken plea in those steady eyes. She looked at Celeste, innocent and warm, who had called her a princess. And then at her father, whose love had always come with conditions. Her throat tightened. "I'll go," she whispered. Alexander's head snapped toward her. But she met his eyes, shaking her head slightly. "Don't stop me." Because she knew, if he fought her father, it would destroy him. Edward smirked. "Wise." He extended a hand. Seraphina hesitated, then stepped past Alexander, her shoulders trembling but squared. Edward's men flanked her. The black car door opened. She slid inside. Alexander stood in the doorway, fists clenched, heart hammering with helpless fury. The door shut. Tail lights glowed red as the car pulled away. The house fell silent. Celeste clung to Mrs. Ramirez, her eyes wide, whispering, "Papa, where did she go?" Alexander couldn't answer. And then, from Celeste's small body, came a sound he hadn't heard before, a cough. Small, but sharp. Again. And again. His heart sank. The black car disappears into the night, Seraphina trapped once more in her father's shadow. Inside the duplex, Celeste's cough worsens, echoing in the quiet house. Alexander realizes his battles are only beginning, and this one could cost far more than pride. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next release. The duplex felt emptier than ever. For 2 weeks after Seraphina left in the black car, Alexander Moreau moved through life like a man half asleep. He still rose at dawn, still hauled trash across the city, still made Celeste's breakfast before school. But the small details, the laughter at dinner, the spark in Celeste's eyes when she asked about the princess on the couch, were gone. The house had grown quieter. Too quiet. And Celeste had stopped humming. One Thursday night, as Alexander folded laundry, he heard the sound again, a cough from upstairs. Short, sharp, followed by another. He climbed the stairs quickly. Celeste sat on the bed, her small frame shaking with each spasm. Her cheeks were flushed, her forehead burning to the touch. "Papa, I don't feel good," she whispered, her voice weak. Alexander's chest tightened. He wrapped her in a blanket, hurried her into the car, and drove through the rain-slicked streets to the nearest hospital. The ER was crowded, humming with fluorescent lights and weary nurses. Alexander filled out forms with trembling hands. A nurse in scrubs finally took Celeste's vitals and pulled him aside. "She needs fluids, tests, possibly an overnight stay," the nurse said. "We'll need a deposit to begin." Alexander braced himself. "How much?" $6,000. The word struck him like a blow. 6,000, money he didn't have, money his savings and overtime could never stretch to cover. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "Please. I can pay in installments. Just help her." The nurse's expression softened, but her answer was firm. "Hospital policy. I'm sorry." Alexander sat in the waiting area, his daughter lying pale and listless on the cot beside him. His head sank into his hands. For the first time in years, the weight of helplessness crushed him. He had built his life around protecting Celeste, but now, all his strength meant nothing. And then, a voice cut through the despair. Put it under my name. Alexander's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway, drenched from the rain, her coat clinging to her frame, was Seraphina Carlisle. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating. But she stepped forward, her chin high, her eyes steady. She pulled a sleek black card from her purse and handed it to the nurse. Whatever she needs, Seraphina said firmly. Do it now. The nurse's eyebrows lifted, but she nodded and hurried off. Alexander rose slowly, his eyes searching hers. Why are you here? Seraphina's gaze softened as it fell on Celeste. Because I couldn't sleep knowing I'd left her behind. Or you. Hours passed. The machines beeped softly as Celeste rested, for fluids easing her fever. Alexander sat at her bedside, Seraphina across from him. For the first time since she'd left, silence wasn't hostile, it was tender, fragile. Finally, Alexander broke it. I owe you an apology. Seraphina shook her head. You don't. You gave me more than anyone ever has. A safe couch. A chance to feel normal. He met her eyes. And I let you walk away. Her lips curved, bittersweet. You didn't let me. I chose it. To stop him from crushing you. Alexander frowned. Your father. My father thinks love is a transaction, she said quietly. Everything is a price, a deal, a debt. But you gave without asking anything back. And that's why I'm here. Because maybe, just maybe, that's what love is supposed to be. Her words lingered in the sterile air, heavier than any storm. The next day, Seraphina stood in front of a wall of glass, staring out at the skyline of her father's penthouse. Edward Carlisle sat in his leather chair, expression carved from marble. You embarrassed this family, he said coldly. Running off, consorting with men beneath you, dragging our name through filth. Seraphina turned, her eyes blazing. And what has your name ever brought me, father? A cage lined with gold. Parties filled with strangers who don't even know my laugh. Edward's jaw clenched. I don't want your money. Or your legacy, she continued, her voice shaking but strong. I want a life that's mine. One where love isn't measured in bank accounts. For a flicker of a moment, something unguarded crossed Edward's face. Fear, not of losing control, but of losing her entirely. But pride buried it just as quickly. You're making a mistake. Seraphina lifted her chin. Then it will be mine to make. The next morning, Alexander was pouring coffee when a knock came at the door. He opened it, and there she was. Seraphina. Standing in the soft glow of sunrise, her hair loose around her shoulders, a small paper bag in her hands. I brought muffins, she said, her voice almost shy. Blueberry. For Celeste. Alexander stared, torn between disbelief and relief. Seraphina, what are you doing? She held his gaze, her words deliberate. I'm not here for a night. I'm here to stay, if you'll have me. The paper bag trembled in her hands, as if her whole world balanced inside it. Behind him, Celeste's laughter floated down the stairs, bright and alive again. For the first time in weeks, Alexander felt the storm inside him ease. But he also knew, letting Seraphina stay wasn't just an act of kindness anymore. It was a choice that would change all their lives. Alexander stood frozen at the door, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Seraphina waited, eyes glistening, heart bared. Comment below, would you choose love over wealth? Alexander's hand lingered on the doorframe. His heart thundered like a drum, echoing the weight of choice. Seraphina stood before him, a paper bag trembling in her grasp, her eyes shimmering like someone who had walked miles barefoot through fire just to arrive here. Behind him, Celeste's soft voice carried down the stairs. Papa, who's here? Alexander's throat tightened. He glanced at Seraphina, fragile yet fierce, a woman who had defied her father's empire for something as fragile and foolish as love. And still, she waited. He opened the door wider. "It's someone who came back," he called to Celeste. Seraphina's breath caught as he stepped aside, letting her into the modest warmth of the duplex. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and laundry soap. Celeste padded into the room in her pajamas, her curls messy, her smile faint but real. When she saw Seraphina, her eyes lit up. "You came back." Celeste squealed, rushing forward. Seraphina crouched, hugging the little girl tightly, the muffins nearly crushed between them. "I promised, didn't I?" she whispered. Alexander stood back, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. Something about it, a billionaire's daughter kneeling on a faded rug in a tiny duplex kitchen, felt impossible. And yet, it was the most natural sight he had ever seen. For a week, Seraphina stayed. She cooked with Alexander, helped Celeste with her homework, and even insisted on scrubbing dishes though she had never held a sponge in her life. They became a rhythm, laughter over burnt pancakes, evenings with Celeste tucked between them as Alexander read aloud, quiet moments when Seraphina's hand brushed his and lingered. But beneath it all was a shadow, the looming certainty that Edward Carlisle would not let this last. That certainty arrived one gray afternoon. Alexander was returning from work when he spotted the sleek black sedan parked outside the duplex. His pulse spiked. He quickened his pace. Inside, Celeste sat at the table coloring. Seraphina stood near the door, facing her father. Edward Carlisle filled the tiny space like a storm cloud in a sunlit room, his tailored suit a sharp contrast to peeling paint and worn furniture. His voice was cold. "This charade ends today." Alexander stepped forward. "You don't belong here." Edward's gaze flicked to him, disdain curling his lip. "And you do. A man who hauls trash. Who counts pennies at the register." Alexander clenched his fists, but Seraphina cut in, her voice steel. "Enough. You don't get to decide for me anymore." Edward's face hardened. "You're throwing away a dynasty. For what? For this?" He gestured toward the cramped kitchen. "You'll regret it." Seraphina's hand slipped into Alexander's. "I'd rather live poor and free than rich and owned." For a long, tense moment, Edward said nothing. His jaw worked, his eyes flickered, rage, hurt, something unnameable. Then, finally, he turned toward the door. "This is your mistake to make," he said quietly, almost mournfully. "And when it destroys you, don't come crawling back." The door slammed, rattling the frame. Celeste broke the silence. "Papa," she whispered. Alexander exhaled, pulling her close. "It's okay, little star. It's okay." But as he looked at Seraphina, he knew it wasn't over. The cost of defying Edward Carlisle would echo long after tonight. The weeks that followed were a test. Gossip columns splashed Seraphina's photo across glossy covers, Paris turns back on fortune for garbage man paparazzi stalked the duplex, snapping pictures of peeling paint and broken fences. Alexander's co-workers muttered in break rooms. Celeste came home with whispers from classmates about her princess stepmom. And yet, through the noise, they built something real. Nights filled with warmth. Mornings with laughter. Seraphina learning to braid Celeste's hair. Alexander learning to let someone share his burdens. For every headline, there was a quiet moment that stitched them tighter together. One evening, as the city lights flickered alive beyond the window, Alexander sat with Seraphina on the worn couch. Celeste was asleep upstairs. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. "Walking away from everything?" Seraphina leaned her head against his shoulder. "Alexander, that wasn't everything. This is." She gestured around, the small home, the silence, the child upstairs. "For the first time in my life, I'm not performing. I'm living." He turned, searching her face. "And what if he tries again?" Her smile was gentle but resolute. Then we fight. Together. The word together wrapped around him like a promise. Weeks later, the inevitable came, a letter. Edward Carlisle had written her out of the will. No shares, no inheritance, no fortune. When Seraphina read it, her hands trembled, but she didn't cry. She folded the letter neatly, placed it in a drawer, and walked into the kitchen where Alexander and Celeste were making pancakes. Without a word, she tied an apron around her waist and started flipping batter. "Did you burn them again?" she teased Alexander. He laughed. Celeste giggled. And in that small, smoky kitchen, Seraphina knew she had chosen right. Months passed. The seasons turned. The duplex bloomed not with wealth, but with warmth, laughter echoing off the walls, mornings filled with the smell of coffee and muffins, nights spent under blankets with stories and dreams. And then came a spring morning. The sun spilled gold through the curtains. Celeste ran outside, barefoot on the dewy grass. Alexander followed, a smile tugging at his lips. Behind him, Seraphina stepped into the light, her hand slipping into his. For a moment, time stilled. They had lost fortunes, faced ridicule, and defied empires. But standing together in the sunrise, they had found something money could never buy. Family. Love. Freedom. Alexander squeezed her hand. "Welcome home," he whispered. Seraphina's smile glistened like dawn. "I've been home since the night you opened that door." The sun rose higher, spilling warmth over their faces. The world beyond could rage, judge, condemn, but inside this small circle, there was peace. And sometimes, peace was the greatest fortune of all. Subscribe for more cinematic stories that move the heart.